Hey everyone, and welcome to this video on Pluto in the ninth house. I am Cassandra, the Saffron Sage, helping you use astrology to evolve, and today we're talking about ninth house Pluto. So first we will talk about the story of Pluto and the mythology, then we'll talk about the nature of the ninth house, and then what it means when Pluto is in the ninth house. So let's get into the video. So for the mythology of Pluto, when I was doing research into this, the one story that did pop up the most was the Persephone myth. And so the Persephone story is about how Pluto kidnapped Persephone. Pluto was lord of the underworld, so he took her to the underworld where she became queen. The way the story goes is that he kidnapped her. Her mom, Ceres or Demeter, depending on which myth you follow, got upset and came to find her daughter and save her and bring her back home. And Pluto had to make this deal that he would let her go. And he did make the deal. But he was able to get her to eat pomegranate seeds, which, so the story goes, maybe she didn't know this sealed her fate in staying in the underworld, because for every seed she ate, she had to stay a certain amount of time. So then when Pluto let her go, then she only had to go 6 months. So now Persephone goes 6 months to stay with her mother Demeter above ground in the earth, and then she goes for 6 months down to do her stay in the underworld. Demeter, being known as like the mother, the nurturer, the one who harvests the crops, is happy when her daughter is there. And so for the 6 months that Persephone is with Demeter, this is when we have spring. This is when things grow. Things are bountiful. And then when Persephone goes to the underworld, those 6 months are known as winter, where Demeter or Ceres is, just so depressed, so bereft without her daughter that she can't do anything. And that is when we have winter. So Persephone, the Persephone myth is not just about a poor damsel in distress who gets taken away and kidnapped. One disclaimer here is that there are some versions of this story that say that Persephone went willingly. So the moral of the Persephone myth here is that the maiden turns into the mother, who turns into the crone. It's about the innocent, naive young girl who doesn't know how to be responsible for her own self, becoming queen of that underworld by mastering her subconscious mind and becoming a woman. And so again, this is not necessarily a damsel in distress story as much as it is a story about coming into power, making the journey from powerlessness to power, which is really what Pluto is all about. So more little details about this story that I didn't know. One is that the reason Pluto fell in love with Persephone is that Cupid shot a dart at him. And because he didn't want him to be lonely in the underworld watching over all these departed souls. More things about Pluto. Pluto is known as the god of wealth because jewels and diamonds come from underground. Pluto in Roman mythology. It's Hades in Greek mythology. And so Pluto's identity was really comprised of these two entities. One is Hades, but the other one is Pluton, also known as Dispater, who had power over the underworld and mineral wealth. The underworld being the resting place of departed souls. A little bit about Pluto's family tree. Here is that Pluto's dad was Saturn, his brother was Jupiter, who really freed him. Jupiter freed Pluto from the wrath of Saturn, so that's something to know. He was also brothers with Poseidon, and his sisters were Ceres, Juno, and Vesta. So that being said, that means Persephone was his niece. So now that we've talked about the mythology of Pluto, let's talk about what Pluto means as a planet in the chart in astrology. The first thing to know is that Pluto by sign is going to outline generational themes. These are going to be, and this is because Pluto moves very, very slowly. The transit of Pluto is 14 to 30 years. So because it is so slow, it represents generational themes. These are not aspects of the personality wherever your Pluto is. Where we find Pluto by house, this is how you moved through a past life. These are the themes that you're going to be probably most comfortable with, and the way that you could potentially transform in this life. Now, just because you have Pluto in a house does not mean that house of your life, that area of life is guaranteed to transform because the transformation isn't guaranteed. The Pluto placement in the chart just represents the potential, but doesn't mean you're going to realize that potential. Now, there is something called the polarity point, and this is from Jeffrey Wolf Green, and basically it's the opposite point, and it represents the soul evolution in this life. Now, this is how we transform and transcend the limits of the past, and you know, that's what it is. So then there's the polarity point. The polarity point of anyone's Pluto is the opposite point that it lands in the chart. So, you know, if your Pluto is at 20 degrees of Capricorn, then the polarity point is 20 degrees Cancer. It's the point directly across. And this is the energy to sort of learn how to allow, learn how to master, learn how to accept and work with, to really sort of realize the potential of your Pluto. And again, not everyone will do this, right? Some people will sort of stay in that energetic comfort zone of where their Pluto is by sign and house. So let's go ahead and move on to the ninth house. For the ninth house, we're first going to talk about the nature of the ninth house, and then we'll move on to what Pluto means there. So for the ninth house, this is a cadent house. So the third, sixth, the ninth, and 12th house are cadent houses. They are said to be the less powerful of all the three sets, angular, succedent, and cadent. The ninth house represents travel, God, religion, higher education, the meaning of life, other cultures, the law, publishing, philosophy, foreigners, foreign culture, foreign places. Anything under that umbrella of foreign falls in that ninth house. It can also be the place where we see divination, magic, and astrology. Now, there is some debate in astrology about like the 8th house or the 9th house when it comes to the occult. And I think of the 8th house more of like mediumship. Things that psychic information or mediumship, to me, those go in the 8th house. But when it comes to the rules that you follow to do something that has a belief system. So this would be like the Hermetic laws or the universal laws, or any kind of thing that would be considered a law or a doctrine, right? So the doctrines of the mystery schools or the doctrines of religion, these all go in the ninth house. The ninth house are the rules or the information that we use to understand those systems, the systems that organize or explain or describe the meaning of life. And that is why magic, astrology, the occult, and mystery traditions can fall in that ninth house. Now, this is debatable, so just know that astrologers debate about this stuff. The ninth house is, again, philosophy. It's questioning the meaning of life. It's how we organize and understand what is right, what is meaningful. Things like cults, things like rules that we follow, these go in the ninth house. Belief systems are found in that ninth house. So now that we have defined what the ninth house is, let's move on to what it means when Pluto is in the ninth house. Okay, so I will be referencing my notes for this video. Pluto in the ninth house. This is going to be all about the compulsive desire to study, to have a mental challenge, and there's almost a compulsion for this Pluto to know more, right? Because we have to think about the ninth, third house axis to really understand the nature of the ninth. The third house is where we find the little facts, the little tidbits of information, things you can learn very quickly. The ninth house is where we see things that are more thorough, more long-term forms of education, things that take a lot of things that have depth, things that you have to take a longer amount of time or commitment to be able to really fully understand. So there's some just little characteristics of someone with this ninth house Pluto. They might write something and then rewrite it over and over and over. That's just one little example. Sometimes people with this Pluto here will dive into some really, really deep study, but they might reach a point where they begin to feel dissatisfied with it, especially when it gets to the in-depth part. Now, that's not going to be true for everyone. And some people with this Pluto will have some stories if they travel abroad. I'm just saying, weird things can happen. when it comes to the deeper need of this placement, there is a need with Pluto here to understand yourself in a spiritual, philosophic, metaphysical sense. So when it comes to this Pluto placement, there is an innate need to understand yourself on a mental or philosophical level. So really, the quest for the meaning of life is super important for this placement. The desire to not just know things and not just have a religion, not just have faith, but to understand deeply the reason why a faith is the way it is, to understand deeply all the different rules or the different laws or the different information that categorizes a belief system, a faith, a dogma, or a religion. So people with this placement really do need to understand themselves in a faith context or a religious context. So there, with this placement comes this desire to understand yourself and like not just understand yourself, but have a relationship between you, not just you and the experience of the divine, but between you and the rules or the reasons or the laws or the doctrines or the written scripture or the written description or the written words of a belief system, faith, or some kind of philosophy. So for some people with Pluto in the ninth, it will be in a religious sense. For others, it will come in the form of philosophy. And for others, it could even be knowing something that is none of those things, like even something like economics, where knowing the deeper meaning of why economics are important, or politics. So even though it may not seem like it's related to faith, the person's philosophy will be intertwined with the rules of the deeper reasons of the field of study they go into. That's another way this can show up. Some people with Pluto in the ninth will, again, not be religious as much as have some kind of study, long-term form of study that they're really drawn to, or is a meaningful part of their life. So with this placement, it really is all about the framework to explain the larger forces. Oftentimes it will be metaphysical, philosophical. It'll be about principles. And sometimes these people can have past lives where they traveled, or they were philosophers, or they, again, went on a quest to find the meaning of life, these truth seekers. Sometimes they can be loners, and in this life, they can have experiences in the culture they're born into where they feel alien, they feel like they don't fit in. Somehow something has to change for them here. So it could just be they're from a certain place that has a certain ideology and they don't resonate with that ideology. And so they go out in a quest to find a place where they do, or they end up just, possibly at some point in their lives leaving a belief system that they don't feel like they fit into. And this can really cause actually a shock for the person. Every Pluto placement can cause some kind of crisis if the person sort of stays in the energy of that Pluto. In this case, it is something related to your belief system or your mental framework. So ways this show up is, again, they can just have this desire to go beyond the culture they're from. And it doesn't even necessarily mean their culture is incorrect or doing something terrible, as much as this inner longing for more, this inner longing to learn about the way other people do things or learn about other philosophies in life. Some people with this placement can also be drawn to philosophies and cultures from other times. So we can see people who are really, really into the history of a certain culture, many different cultures or belief systems, drawn to a certain, like people who are like, oh my God, I love the pyramids, I'm obsessed with them, or anything like that, where they're drawn to a certain religion, belief system, dogma, or doctrine that is from the past. Usually the development of intuition is significant for people with Pluto in the ninth house. And oftentimes they're going to have a desire to really understand, again, the rules and the laws or the frameworks of intuition development. Now, sometimes the challenge, one of the crises here, is that when Pluto is in the ninth, you can be very attached to your beliefs. So this can be hard for people with this placement to, for example, engage in like a friendly debate Ninth house Pluto might not know what friendly debate is, because it's like there's this attachment, this connection almost to how you believe. And in strong cases, this can be very, very threatening for the person to, well, on one hand, they want to expand their belief system. Because it's Pluto, there can be this need to cling to the belief system for dear life, for security. And so the crisis that can happen, there's a couple ways. One, you can get a little preachy. You can start to want to get everyone to believe what you believe. These are ninth house problems. And just feeling like you need to get someone to believe what you believe. You may rely too much on trying to convert people to your way of thinking. Another way that the crisis of this placement might show up is having a hard time expressing what you know. Oftentimes, Pluto ninth house are going to know a lot of things. A lot of that knowledge will come from past lives. A lot of that knowledge will come from this innate ability to study and learn quickly. Not even quickly, but to study and learn like the reason why, right? So ninth house Pluto isn't just going to be happy with the facts. They want to know why. There can be a challenge with putting those reasons why into words and being able to put it into a framework, being able to say it in a way people get it, people understand. Understanding how to meet someone where they're at isn't always going to be natural with this Pluto placement. So sometimes people with ninth house Pluto can talk over people's heads really easily and not even know they're doing it. Most people with ninth house Pluto either have traveled physically or mentally through reading and learning and mentally exploring in that sense. Sometimes people with ninth house Pluto will also have visions of the future, which, they'll have this innate intuition. The challenge for the ninth house Pluto person is to understand that the vision is not meant to manifest exactly. That's not the purpose of the vision. The purpose of the vision is to lead you through right now, and then the new vision emerges. So again, because that Pluto is such a fixated and intense planet, one of the ways this can show up is that ninth house Pluto person could get overly fixated on one vision and like put blinders onto everything else and not be willing to adjust when life changes and maybe that vision is no longer apply. So being able to take the intuitive visions as a temporary little guidepost, not as the actual endpoint that is not flexible, not as this fixed endpoint. So it's about having to learn that vision, or that even if it's not like a psychic vision, maybe it's like a dream. That dream of the meaning of that thing, of what's possible down the road, forever down the road. That dream is not always possible to manifest. It's not always there to happen exactly as you think it's going to happen, and there's no guarantee. So to allow the intuitive visions, allow that to come through, allow their visions on what's possible and their hope for the future to come through, but not to be overly dependent on it coming to pass exactly in that way, not treating it like a guarantee. So it's about learning to detach from the outcome of a specific vision or goal. So for the polarity point in that third house, the third house for the ninth house Pluto people is about being able to understand that everyone thinks differently and to get okay with that. To learn how to meet people where they are at, to learn how to connect with someone on the level they are on and not try to push them any further than they are, not try to force someone into believing what you believe. Sometimes people with this placement will have almost like an internal security that comes from being right about what you believe, even if what you believe is that you are an atheist, because even atheists or agnostics, that is a belief system. And so sometimes the ninth house Pluto person will have this desire to find the hole in someone's argument and just pick at that and like point it out and really just destroy someone else's argument about what they believe. This comes from a fear that you are wrong. If you are so hell-bent on convincing someone else that you are right, then that actually comes from a fear that you are wrong. When you have no fear of being wrong and you've accepted that you could be wrong and it's all good, you have zero need to try to convert someone else to your way of thinking. And this might be a challenging lesson for some ninth house Pluto people. They may have situations in life where they have tried to convert people. They may have situations in life where they are debating people and like finding the holes in their argument and wanting to be right and wanting to win. And the lesson here is to learn that everything is relative, that all truths are true, that everyone has a different belief system, and that you can actually believe something without needing to make someone else wrong who doesn't believe that. Two beliefs that are opposite can coexist. So the example I come up with, because I have traveled abroad, this is a huge overgeneralization, but just for the purposes of this video, in the West, being raised in the US, we're often taught that independence is the most important thing. Being independent, making your own way, making your own choices. Now, in the East, and again, this is a generalization, it's not all like this, but with the influence of Confucianism, there's a bigger belief that, conforming is better. It's better to like do the things other people do, be like other people, not rock the boat. These traits are more valued. In a very, very general sense, in the West, independence is valued more. In the East, conformity is valued more. For me personally, being expected when I lived in another country to order what someone else ordered to eat, because that's what they do there, was so foreign to me and seemed so wrong. But my point of this is that, first of all, I'm not complaining about this. It's not wrong to order what you want, and it's not wrong to order what someone else orders. Neither one of these things by itself are actually wrong. What makes it right or wrong is the culture you are in. And the culture you are in determines whether this behavior is valued or that behavior is valued. Neither of these things are technically right. Now, someone who is super, super indoctrinated into their own culture will be defensive here. And they'll say, well, of course they're wrong for not being independent. Look at all these reasons. And then the other side of the argument will say, but look at all these reasons where independence causes selfishness. And we could argue about this all day. And again, there are many different nuances. I know there are people in the West who value peace and harmony and doing and going along with the crowd when it's appropriate. And there are people in the East who are like, no, we want our independence. So again, I'm not saying everyone in one place believes one thing, but something as simple as being able to live in a culture that from an early age is taught something that is so opposite of what I was taught in my own culture helped me understand that everything is relative, and that the only thing that determines what is right or wrong oftentimes is like the things we are raised to believe are just the way it is. There's some culture somewhere out there who doesn't do it that way, and they're raised to believe something totally different. And so the point here is that life is relative. Now, again, we could argue about this all day, and someone could be like, no, independence matters because of this, or conformity matters because of this. And I think in a perfect world, we'd have the right balance of both of those things at the right time. But for the point of this video, this is an example of the ninth house Pluto person's lessons in life, where maybe they come into life clinging to a certain belief system, some kind of mental or emotional crisis happens that pokes holes in that belief system and forces them to go out and learn a different one, or they have a natural curiosity that takes them to that. Their polarity point, that third house, is being able to see how it could be okay for someone to think differently. It is only when the ninth house Pluto person can start to begin to understand this that their words will start making sense to other people, because now they will have the ability to first say, what does this person believe or think? What is their framework of the world, before they start trying to share what they believe. If you're trying to learn this polarity point, if you're trying to learn the lessons and master this Pluto, you can start to create this curiosity, cultivate a curiosity of how other people think, and create a sense of openness that it's not the same as you. The ninth house Pluto people can be natural teachers, but the ability to be understood or the ability to be listened to can be blocked until you start to begin to incorporate that polarity point, that third house of understanding the mental level of the student, understanding the belief systems of the student, understanding the framework of the student, and expressing yourself from that level, really understanding where people are at before trying to explain what something means to them. Now, if you have a ninth house Pluto and you're really stuck in that Pluto, you might be tempted to explain all of this away using philosophy. So watch out for that tendency as well. So that is what I have on the ninth house Pluto. It's all about faith, belief, and the meaning of life. Being able to understand the doctrines, the philosophies, the rules, or the laws that make a belief system make sense. If you are a little too stuck in this Pluto, the symptoms are people won't really listen to you. You might express your beliefs, but you won't be heard. You don't feel like you can get the words out. You know all this knowledge, but it doesn't seem to be getting through to anyone. If that's the case, you can honor and open up this polarity point by really learning how other people think, how other people believe, and trying to let it be okay and live in harmony with the fact that all truths are true. That everyone is entitled to their own belief system, their own framework of the world, just like you are entitled to your own. So that is what I have for this video, you guys. Let me know in a comment below if it resonated, if it made sense. I love hearing from you. You can also join my free live webinar helping you find the gifts in your chart. So if you want to join that, it's free. There's a link below where you can sign up. So I hope to see you there, and I will see you all in the next video.